Good evening. Today is Wednesday, May 22nd, 2019. This is the Ashland School Committee meeting. Start by reading our vision statement. The Ashland Public Schools will be a model district that embraces the academic and social emotional growth of all students through a supportive, collaborative, and challenging experience. Our students will develop into lifelong learners who will contribute positively to society. This meeting is being recorded by WACA Cable TV. Our order of business will be the reorganization of the Ashland School Committee, review of our agenda, which we'll do now, which is recognitions and student presentations. I understand we have none.
None tonight.
Public comment. We'll cover the superintendent's evaluation, a presentation from Jen Cutler, Director of Counseling at SEL. Mindess School Improvement Plan update, a middle school improvement plan update, highlights of the Ashland Public Schools Communication Survey, recommendation for placement of batting cage at the middle school, an appointment to accept board of directors for 2019-2020. We'll handle our administrative items, including the superintendent's report, assistant superintendent's report, warrant approval, approval of minutes, acceptance of gifts, and committee reports, member updates, and action items. First order being the organization of the Ashland School Committee. Mr. Adams has the gavel to run this portion of the meeting as we talk about who will be our next chair, vice chair, and secretary.
First and foremost, ooh, wow, loud. Congratulations to our two elected officials yesterday, Paul Kendall and Aaron Williams, and the school committee elections. At this time, we'll open the floor for nominations for the chair of the Ashland School Committee for the 2019-20 school year.
So I'll start by nominating Lori to continue on as our chair. She is not here, dealing with a personal family matter today, and she did want to be here for a variety of reasons. But I'll be honest, I had a conversation with her briefly. She expressed that she was interested in continuing on. She expressed concern that I might want the role. I told her that I was perfectly fine with the way things are. And so I'm nominating Lori to continue on in her current role.
I will second that because I don't see any need for shaking things up.
Yeah. No, I agree. I'll third it.
So no further discussion. We'll take a motion for Lori Tosti to be.
We already did. So
well, okay, we'll take up the motion for a vote.
So now we can vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes 3-0. Next.
You're not done yet.
Good job.
I know. I've got to move forward. Since we don't have the chairs not here, she can't take over.
That's right.
We'll also take a motion for the vice chair for the Ashland School Committee for 2019-20 school year.
As we were talking, I don't see a need to change anything. I would move to nominate Mark Terry for vice chair.
And I agree. I will second that.
I'm happy to continue doing it. Appreciate the support.
Great. Thank you, Mark.
Vote.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
Aye.
3-0. And I'll now turn it over to Vice Chair Mark Terry.
You can take
So
over.
we do also need to appoint a secretary, I believe. You have served
Yes.
well, Kathy.
Thank
You've done
you.
a great job. So are you interested in continuing on?
I would if the committee wants me to.
Oh, yeah. No,
If everyone's
no
happy with
desire
my
to
job.
be part of that. So.
Paul, do you want to make the motion?
I would move to appoint Ms. Kathleen Bates as our secretary.
I'll second that motion. Any further discussion?
Yeah.
Call for the vote. Aye.
Aye.
And no opposition. 3-0. We have the same committee.
We have stability.
We have
Excellent.
stability. There we go. All right. So we've done our procedures, reviewed our agenda, and adoption of that. We have no student presentations. Anybody in the public who wishes to make a public comment? Seeing no public, we'll move on to the next item, which is Jim's evaluation.
Okay.
So we just set a little context on this. So as we all talked about process for doing Jim's evaluation, which we do on an annual basis, we had agreed that Lori would write up a summary taking individual input from all the people in the committee, complete an evaluation, synthesize that into a document. And what we talked about was under recent open meeting law determinations, case law, that what couldn't happen, as had been permitted to some degree in the past, was a copy of the synthesized composite document circulated back to the board members before this meeting. And so with Lori not being here, it presented a logistical challenge a little bit in terms of how could I get the document to be able to discuss the subject and to circulate it without seeing it and without having an open meeting law issue. So Lori and I talked about the logistics of this, and what I had Lori do, or suggested to her and she agreed with, was to send to my assistant, Lisa, in my office, by email, the document that she wrote up. I had Lisa seal it. Now, the idea of putting sealed on this don't open until meeting was Lisa's idea, not mine. But I wanted to just sort of flush that out because of the open meeting laws involved. I have not seen what's in here at all. This was sent to my office a couple days ago by Lori, or yesterday maybe. And so with that, I'm going to unseal the envelope to see who won the Grammy here and circulate it to the committee. And of course, this will become public record afterwards. And I am hoping, of course, it got photocopied properly, right? Can you pass one to Paul, please? All right. And so I think in the past, what, and you have to give me a little latitude because I have not had the opportunity to read this
Right.
before. I think what we have done is reviewed the comments in each section, and then asked for the committee as a whole to adopt the document as a fair representation, assuming that it is, of our evaluation of the superintendent. So what I've given you is a 5-page document. And honestly, as I'm looking at it, we may have a hard time reading some of this stuff because I'm not seeing the goals component on here. The form, as folks know, because you completed it individually, had
Right.
a section for completion of the goals, and whether we thought they were met, significantly meet, progress towards, et cetera. And I'm not seeing that on the piece of paper in front of me. But let me at least go through each of the 4 standards. We can talk about that. And unfortunately, it looks like we might have a little bit of an issue in terms of just being able to read some things
So,
too.
I mean, it's possible we can discuss it. And then
Yeah,
it's
so
off
why
to
don't
the
we
next
do
meeting.
that?
Yeah.
All right. Did Lori email this to you as well? Okay. So looking at standard 1, comments and analysis, and so the public is aware that when somebody's individual gives a rating of proficient, there's no comment necessary, but if it's anything other than that, then we do need comments supporting, and that's what each of us is supposed to do. I should say, 4 out of 5 committee members completed their form and turned them in, and that's what Lori was relying upon. One person did not. So the comments here are Mr. Adams' efforts are in line with the expectations set by the committee. While the district is continuously moving forward, the committee recognizes the quality and effort of staff can be varied, and we continue to strive for excellence. The committee notes the evaluation of ELL, Mindess, and Pitaway, and other curriculum programs as important steps taken to understand and improve our programming. As you look at the sub-ratings here, the overalls are listed as 1A proficient, 1B proficient, 1D proficient, 1C, and 1E are exemplary. So this is the first page.
That's the first page, the
Okay.
summative of
All
everything.
right, so you know what I'm going to do is change on the fly here. I'm going to assume that Mr. Adams did not, oops, except for me clicking the wrong button. If you could bring that back up, Jim. Did not, monkey around with this, and this is actually, exactly what it's supposed to be.
Downloading directly from her email.
Okay. So what Lori did explain to me is her practice has been to read the summary part, not the individual comments, like I started to. But let me read from that now that it's available. Thank you. And just, so the evaluator comments. Members of the Ashland School Committee have given Superintendent Adams an overall rating of exemplary this year, with ratings of exemplary in the areas of management and operations, family and community engagement, and professional culture, and a rating of proficient in instructional leadership. With respect to the goals set by the school committee, findings of significant progress were made for all goals, with some either nearly complete and others expected to be year-long efforts. Noted was Mr. Adams' ability to move the district forward through his leadership in a number of different areas. The analysis of ELL, Pitaway, and Mindess, which I mentioned a minute ago, programs the continued focus on the social and emotional well-being of students and staff in connection to all stakeholders were highlights. All of the work done and continuing with the MSBA process was also noted. The addition of the position of Director of Counseling was an important step in addressing the needs of our students, and the ongoing passion for and commitment to Ashland students and staff were also noted. Jim's effort to be known by students is evident. His focus on keeping the blueprint for continuous student improvement relevant and tying district action back to the vision and goals the stated vision and goals remains a strength. Jim continues to offer his budget expertise to help create a budget that meets the needs of the district, considering the resources available, and he plans ahead for what is sustainable or what could be added in the future. His many efforts at outreach and communication are appreciated, and continuous effort is made to have a further reach. His interaction with those in and out of district is collaborative. The committee expects these standards for consistent communication and collaboration apply to all staff, and know that Mr. Adams has high standards for all employees of the district and will continue to raise the bar. Jim's dedication to Ashland and passionate leadership are appreciated by all, and we appreciate his exemplary service to Ashland. So that is the summary that Lori has written up, and we don't need to, we can get a motion in a second to adopt the document as a whole if people are ready to do that. Understand that I haven't even seen the totality of what this is, but why don't we do, before doing that, if there's anything anybody wants to add or comment on? Paul, Lori, Kathy?
No, and I'll note that when I sent my rubric that I filled out, I also sent it to Jim, so he has that from me particularly, but you know, I think in general, echo everything that was said. I think we've had a lot going on, especially this year, and you know, I think one of our strengths as a town is due to the work that, you know, Mr. Adams and Mr. Herbert put in on the collaboration. You know, I think, you know, sometimes we get credit for things that are done by those two, right? And it makes it a lot easier for our boards, Board of Selectmen, Board of School Committee, and all those to collaborate and pull in the same direction when the two boots on the ground are working together as well as they are. So appreciate that.
Yeah. Well said. No, I appreciate Lori's summary and taking, you know, all of our input and summarizing it, and I think she articulated it well.
I would just kind of echo the thoughts, and I certainly fully support the summary that Lori wrote up as being an accurate statement of how I feel about things. I guess my only add is to say thank you. You know, I continue to feel that you're absolutely the right superintendent for this district and for this community. And you know, even as I'm reading now what other people commented upon, I'm thinking, I don't think I mentioned once the MSBA in my individual write-up. I don't remember doing that. And like Paul, I provided mine to Jim as well. It just, to me, illustrates how much is going on as it is, that you could be thinking about a potential school building project and it doesn't even come to the forefront of your mind. So my only added comment is thank you.
Thank you.
Can I?
I'll pass that back.
Yeah. I don't know what the next thing you want to do is, but.
So I think in terms of motion, if it does feel a little inappropriate to vote on a document and to accept something that we haven't seen the totality of it, even though I think Laura's narrative covers it all.
I mean, I don't know. I don't see the reason why we don't, you know, review it and discuss it here, and then you know, review it with the other two members of the next meeting and adopt it then.
Yeah.
That would be what I would recommend.
Okay. You comfortable with that, Kathy?
Okay.
And Jim, you have any
You're
concerns
the-
about?
No, can I did prepare something that I'd like to.
No.
Okay, fine, thanks. Because I did actually, I put in the vice chair now, but,
Okay, go ahead.
because I have read, obviously the individual was sent only to me, so I've had the opportunity to read your thoughts and comments, so, and as I was doing so, I wanted to put some things in writing, which I haven't done in the past, but I felt it was appropriate this year. So thank you to the committee for their thoughtful and thorough evaluation and how much time and energy each of you puts in to try and accurately reflect the work that's being done in the district and by me in particular. I did, however, want to take a moment and make a few generalized comments as I wrap up my 10th year in Ashland and my 5th as superintendent, if the vice chair would allow me such leeway.
Sure.
Thank you. First, I have been truly blessed to work with a committee that is focused on doing what is best for students while maintaining a conscious effort to your obligation as elected officials of the town of Ashland. Stop just for a moment, as I don't do often enough, and Dr. Vieira reminds me to do, to reflect upon your successes as a committee, instituting tuition-free full-day kindergarten, hiring a full-time SEL director, increasing opportunities for some of our most needy students to stay in district, modifying school start times to mirror the research that shows this is what's best for kids, even if it isn't always that popular, creating policy and working with town officials to increase opportunity and to move the district forward. I could certainly go on, but as a committee, you should be quite proud of your leadership and dedication to the students in town of Ashland. Second, I don't believe any progress in a district would be possible without an incredible teaching and support staff. I've expressed this to staff on numerous occasions. I believe pre-K through 12, we have one of the finest, if not the best, collection of educators in the Commonwealth. Third, it has taken me 5 years to put in place an administrative team that works collaboratively and collectively for the benefit of all students in Ashland. We do not segregate by grade levels when discussing what is best for students, nor does our team bicker about funding to each school. Rather, we come to consensus on what is best for the entirety of the district. This to me is something we can all be proud of. Fourth, I know that we set goals and expectations at the beginning of every year, but as I continuously reflect on my own work, I know that often I don't fulfill or meet those goals and expectations. However, through personal reflection, I try and identify what I can do better as a person and superintendent to lead this district. I know that the decisions I make, you make, or our administrators make do not always make staff, parents, or students happy, nor do they always agree with said decisions. But what I am certain of is that our process is deeply rooted in doing what is best for kids. Lastly, it has been an honor and privilege to call Ashland my home away from home for the past 10 years. While I am proud of the work we've done thus far, I recognize that much more can and needs to be done to better the Ashland Public Schools. I look forward to the many challenges ahead, and I thank you for the trust you've shown in me, in guiding Ashland through a period of tremendous growth and change. I'm forever thankful. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
All right, so let's just make sure that we put that on the agenda for next time to kind of formally vote
All right.
the evaluation that Lori provided, and get that all squared away. You got a tough act to follow. Go ahead, Ms. Cutler.
I don't know, she was even referenced in the write-up.
A few
so.
times. So I start by asking you to, just for people at home, introduce yourself and what your role is with the district. Excuse me.
My name is Jen Cutler. I am the Director of Counseling and Social Emotional Learning for the Ashland Public Schools. I wanted to thank you for having me back so that I'm really excited tonight to present because when I presented in December, I presented sort of my analysis of social emotional learning and the K-12 counseling program in Ashland. And as I was preparing this, I was pretty excited to see that, wow, I really have moved forward and I really feel like we're in a great place to really make a lot of progress next school year in terms of our counseling program and our social emotional learning in Ashland.
Did it not come up?
It's up on my screen.
It's on your screen.
Probably just the input on the wall, right?
Sorry for the technical difficulties. luck with it?
It isn't, you don't select the input from the wall there?
There should just be.
TV button on the wall plate.
Oh, it's the wall plate, not the, okay.
There you
There
go.
we go, yeah. Go ahead, Jeff, sorry. Up there.
In February, I administered a parent survey to all families and guardians in the Ashland schools, pre-K to 12. And I just wanted to highlight a couple, I didn't put this in the slides, but some of the results from the survey, because they've informed sort of my next steps that I made. So I had 243 responses representing all 5 schools. And my first question was, do you feel that you have a good understanding of what social emotional learning means or is? And 56% of respondents indicated that they did. 40% said they somewhat understood SEL, but they would like more information, and 3% indicated that they did not understand SEL at all. Of those who indicated that they somewhat understood or didn't understand at all, 73% indicated they would like to learn more through a newsletter or a website. So 30% indicated they were aware of how SEL was currently being implemented in Ashland. 46 said they were somewhat aware of how the schools were addressing SEL, and 24% said that they were not at all aware of how SEL was being addressed. And then 90% indicated they would like to learn more. Again, I had several different categories: in-person forums, video recording, newsletter, website, and 90% said a newsletter or website. So that brings me to, well, actually first, sorry. My last question in my survey was, are you interested in participating in a parent advisory council around SEL? I got quite a few responses of yes or maybe, depending on when we would be meeting. And based on that, I then followed up with everyone who said yes or maybe through email. And I formed the SEL Parent Advisory Council, which we met for the first time in April. I had 3 different meetings, so I met one with parents during the day, one with parents in the afternoon, and one in the evening, just so that I could have as much input as possible. And we determined after our first meeting that everyone wanted to meet during the summer. So we're going to meet once during the summer, and we're going to meet 6 times during the school year next year. So I have 25 parents who are currently on the council, and they have their children range from pre-K to 12th grade. So all the schools are represented, which I was pretty excited about. I had them I prepared a presentation for them about sort of where we are currently in terms of SEL, and I wanted everyone to be working from the same framework and the same definition. And then I had them complete a strengths and areas of improvement for the school that their children currently attend in terms of SEL. And it was really interesting to see all the responses. I'll be having my first staff SEL committee meeting in June, on June 5th. I'm going to have them complete the same activity, and then I'm going to present them with what the parents completed, so that we can really start making some action items on how we're going to move forward and address what staff feel needs to be addressed in terms of SEL and what parents feel needs to be worked on. So I'm excited about that. I have, I just
So
on my.
Jen, if I
Oh,
may,
sorry.
the council, what is the goal, purpose? Is it just a group of parents that you're soliciting input from? Or is there a tangible task that you're going to have the council work on? What's the
So
goal?
at this moment, it is purely to get feedback for moving forward, but my vision is that we'll break into like subcommittees with specific tasks. And I did, tell them that, all of their feedback will be taken into consideration, but they're not like a decision-making council. But I really would love to, there's a lot of parent outreach workshops I would like to get together for next year. So I thought that would be a really helpful area for the advisory council to help me with in terms of really, talking to other parents in the community about, what's the best way to outreach, what areas are you interested in learning about in terms of SEL, what sort of book club topics can we do, things like that. So that's kind of where I am right now in terms of that. I think it certainly may change. I was very excited because everyone who came had amazing ideas to offer. So I think I'm really thrilled to have that in place.
Great.
Any other questions on that? Okay. So on Monday, I sent out my first SEL parent newsletter, and I will be sending them out monthly, starting in September. I based my first newsletter on the results that I got from the parent survey. So as parents said, they really wanted it to come in the form of a newsletter or a website. And I thought that really made it more equitable in terms of people actually being able to access the same communication and information. So that will be coming. And I'm
Signed up for that?
So
Sorry.
good point. So Jen has sent me a copy of it.
Oh, okay.
And what I'm gonna do is I'll forward it to you. You can subscribe to it.
Oh,
Yep, perfect.
But if it's part of the, right now, those who are getting it are probably the emails that came from the group.
Yep.
Yeah, and myself, so I will forward that to you, then you can subscribe to it, and we'll eventually have that open for everybody else, but, yeah.
And then my second thing this summer is I'm going to be working on a website. So all of the newsletters will be archived on there, and the current
Okay.
ones will be up. So I want to make sure that everyone has the ability to have the information of what we're doing in the district in terms of SEL. So similar to the parent survey, I did a staff survey in February as well. And I formed a staff SEL committee based on interest from that survey. I also have based a lot of sort of our professional development for next year that Dr. Vieira and I are working on together on what staff said that they were, how they were interested in furthering their education around SEL. So we're going to be meeting on June 5th for our first staff SEL committee meeting, and we'll be meeting quarterly throughout the school year. My plan is that we will have a member from the district committee on a building committee for each building in terms of SEL. The committee is comprised of teachers, counselor, either some mental health staff, either a psychologist or a counselor, in some cases both, from all of the buildings. I do have some, Melissa Mercon-Smith from EDP wanted to be on the committee, which I was very excited about, and Audrey LaCroix, the nurse, the head nurse for the district, is also on it, which I think is excellent. So I tried to get as best representation as I could.
Just on that, did we have anybody from the athletic department that's involved? Is Mr. Marks or anyone else?
No, but I could definitely ask Mr. Marks. I mean, I know Mr. Marks and I will be working together in terms of making sure our same message gets to all the coaches.
Yeah, and that really is the concern. I mean, that the
Yep.
athletic program, of course, is a part of the school offerings as a whole, and for this to really work throughout our program,
Right,
I think we want to make sure what you just said is carried out. So
right,
whether he's formally involved or not,
Yep.
it may not be the important part, but
yeah,
that
absolutely,
program and other extracurriculars are
right.
engaged in the same thought process, I think is very important.
Absolutely. I'll reach out to Mr. Marks and see if he would either come on, or we can consult, because he was kind of my next person to set up a meeting with around this for next year. I remember you mentioned that at the December meeting. A lot of the parents also mentioned that in the Parent Advisory Council, that they wanted to make sure the coaches were really incorporating SEL into what they do. So it's definitely something that's right on my radar to include.
Thank you.
Okay, so the survey and meeting with staff has kind of has informed sort of my piece of the professional development for next year. I hope it's okay, Dr. Vieira, that I'm sharing our theme. I just realized I didn't ask you about that. So our professional development theme for next year is called Together We Are Better. That was Dr. Vieira's idea. The integration of curriculum and social emotional learning. So really, as I was meeting with staff, I really felt that we needed to start by really looking at what are simple ways that we can start integrating social emotional learning into what we do on a daily basis with our students. And so that's where Paul and I are working together to do that. I think that I strongly feel that the teachers and coaches and everyone in our building that are directly working with kids every day need to feel that they understand their own social emotional competencies, and that they feel themselves that they're important, because they're the ones who are showing our kids how to regulate themselves and interact socially, and sort of manage their minds and their bodies. So if our students aren't seeing that from the staff, then I don't really see that translating well. So for me, I'm really planning a strong focus on staff self-care and staff development of the social emotional competencies for next year. In my survey, I found a lot of support for I kind of know what SEL is from staff, but I'm not really sure how it applies to me and what I teach. So what I would really love to see, my long-term vision is that I'd love to see it next year, but maybe it'll take us a few years. But I really would like every staff member to be able to easily say, this is what SEL is, this is what it means to me, this is what it looks like in my classroom. And have every parent and child say, oh yeah, I see that every day when I come in your room. But I think we need to start with the staff in terms of that. So we're starting our first big professional development day in August with an awesome speaker, Aaron Polanski, who's coming in. He's going to talk about exactly this, the integration of curriculum and social emotional learning. And then we're going to have a self-care fair, which is kind of like a wellness fair. And actually, I invite you all to come. And it might help with some of your stress as well. I'm working, we have a lot of different vendors coming in. I'll have a mindfulness teacher come and do a presentation to half of the staff while the other half was in the self-care fair. And again, this is another kind of goal of mine, that I would really love every staff member to have their own self-care plan. Because I think we all know, being in education, that if you do it well, you put your whole being into it. And it's really easy to get caught up in that and forget to take care of yourself. I really want our kids, our students, to see that our teachers are real people too, and need help, and to model that self-care, so that then the kids will be like, oh, that's pretty neat, maybe I can try that too. So that's sort of an update on what we're working on in terms of professional development around SEL for next year. I'll be having some book studies and things with that focus on that resilience of teachers and that self-care piece.
So Jen, what would be, you mentioned, you have an idea of where you want to be, and it might be next year, it might be, a couple of years. What's the biggest impediment to that? Is it funding, or is it trying to squeeze it into the allotted time you have for professional development?
I don't think it's either, honestly. I think it's buy-in, and I think that takes time. I think this is changing a culture and a mindset, and I just don't think that happens quickly. So I really think, honestly, I don't think it's funding or PD time, because I feel like I've been afforded both very well, and I think it's buy-in.
Okay.
And I think that just does take some time. Hopefully we'll make a strong sort of progression towards that next year. Any other questions on that piece?
No, good to hear you have the resources you need, and just need to work through it.
I'm curious of how many other districts in the area have a position comparable to yours, or someone who's responsible for SEL.
Yep.
And are you able to take advantage of sort of collaborative efforts with people in other districts to do what you're doing?
Yes. So, when I started, actually, Mr. Adams and Dr. Vieira strongly suggested and recommended that reach out and find like a job alike of SEL directors, since it is such a new role to so many districts. So I did that, and I'm actually now on the SEL for Mass committee. I am the chair of the job alike group for SEL directors. So we meet once a month, and we have about, I want to say, 5 or 6 loyal people who come to every meeting, sort of in this area, and then we have probably 7 or 8 or 9 sort of that are more in Western Mass or towards the Cape, that sometimes will call into our meetings, but I think we're going to try to do, I would like to do regional, so that maybe we meet all together a couple times a year, but then we share minutes and notes. It's been extremely helpful. At our last meeting, we actually talked about sort of working together in the future around PD. So if one of us finds like a really great, trainer or speaker, that we could actually, sort of work cross-district in terms of cost and, providing it for our parents and providing it for our staff. So it's been amazing, honestly. I'm really excited to be part of it. And, we have Marlboro, Westboro, Medfield, I'm forgetting some, but there's about, or Medway, so that we are constantly communicating with each other around this, because we all feel strongly that though we may focus on some different things in our districts and our schools, we should be on the same page. So it's been a really great experience.
To answer your question, we actually had this conversation maybe 2 days ago with regard to how many people Jen was getting to support her in her work, because
Right.
It is so new.
Yeah.
But when you're thinking of the 300 plus districts in the Commonwealth, there are not many,
No.
right? So it's probably less than 20. Would
Yeah,
be my
I would
guess
say that's
across the
accurate.
Commonwealth that have this type of position. They're starting to pop up
Yep.
more and more, and so.
Yeah, well, we're leading again.
I was gonna say,
Yes.
first into the breach, right?
Okay. Oh, so one of the things I wanted to do next year to sort of have all of the buildings on the same page is have a monthly social emotional learning theme that would be the same for whether you're at the preschool or the high school or the middle school. It would be promoted in all buildings and then introduced to parents through the monthly newsletter with a section on, here's, we are focusing this month on self-awareness. Here's what it is. Here are some ways that you can work on this at home, in the community, at your sports games, so that we can really have that connection. So if you had a child at Mindess and you have a child at the high school, you can actually talk to them about the same theme. So that's one thing that will be working on, this spring and summer to get ready for the fall, and then creating the SEL website, which will also have a page for the K-12 counseling on there to communicate with parents and with staff. And then to go along with the monthly theme, I'm creating a virtual toolkit. So it's on Google, but staff could easily go in, and look at the monthly theme and find, okay, I'm a 6th grade teacher. How do I, what are some ways that I can incorporate self-awareness, this month into my classroom? What are some things that I can try out?
And will they have an opportunity maybe to share, ideas of, and start to build a knowledge base of, the things that they're trying and
Yeah.
doing?
So there's some ideas I have are having a specific hashtag for Twitter, where as teachers are, trying out some strategies that they want to share, they can tweet it out with a hashtag, and then I'll probably do some type of incentive raffle for people who do that. And then I was going to ask the building principals if in their monthly staff meetings they could do, I know they do like a, recognition, positive recognition. I was hoping that they could also do, if they have any strategies of that SEL theme of the month that worked really well for them in their class, or maybe something that didn't work and they're asking, for support from other teachers on that. So does that answer your question? Oh, okay, so before I go to the K-12 counseling program update, do you have any questions on, any more questions on what I just presented?
Nope.
Okay. In January, I was very excited because it was the first time I got to meet with all of the counselors, school counselors, K-12 together to do vertical planning in the afternoon on our professional development day. We had a really great, it was just wonderful. The counselors were really excited because I don't think they really have much of a chance to see each other and consult and talk about, what other counselors are doing in the other buildings. What I had them do was I had them complete a self-assessment by building using the Mass model of comprehensive school counseling, which is what I really like them to move to. That was really great too. I had actually done it for each building myself. So when based on what I had seen, then I was able to kind of compare the areas of strength that I thought they had and the areas that I thought needed improvement to what they told me. And it was actually aligned pretty well. So that was nice to see. Each team identified areas that they wanted to work on and sort of put them in order of, okay, what's the first thing we really want to focus on for next year. I also created a school counselor Google group and a resource document that sort of has, I keep updating with best practices for like all areas. So I might have like a career planning area with sort of all like the evidence-based practices that are most current and sort of social skills, anxiety, all different areas that they can use.
And Jen, can you
Yeah.
just say again how many counselors we have in each school, just for people that might be watching?
Sure. So we don't have any counselors in the preschool. At Warren, we have we have 3 school counselors, 2 who are full-time and 1 who is 3 days a week. And at Mindess, we have the same, 2 full-time, 1 3 days a week. Right? And at the middle school, we have 3 full-time school counselors for each grade, and we have a full-time school adjustment counselor. And at the high school, we also, the same as the middle school, we have 3 full-time school counselors and 1 school adjustment counselor,
Thanks.
which is really exciting because a lot of schools do not have that
I
much.
just wanted to
Yeah,
be,
yes.
again, aware.
Can I just ask a follow-up question? I thought are we largely at a 1 person per grade, but how do we handle the .6s or the people that are not full-time? Are they just cramming it all in or? Okay.
Yes,
So kind of to the question Paul asked before, is that an issue of funding that we need to be looking at going forward?
Yes. I mean,
Okay.
eventually, we'd like to get those counselors to be full-time. When we set that aside, those positions, we were comfortable with the .6s at the time, but as we continue to grow enrollment-wise, absolutely.
I agree. And also, we do have, we've had quite a lot of interest in graduate students interning with us. So we have a student right now at the Warrant. And then next year, we'll have 2 at the middle school in the fall, 1 at Warren in the fall, and 1 at Mindess in the fall.
Oh.
So that also, I think is a great opportunity for us, one, to sort of help educate, upcoming counselors, and then also help us, so I think in both ways, we're winning with that. So that's been a kind of neat, I wasn't expecting all of that interest, and a lot of the students are Ashland residents who grew up here and went through the school system, so that's exciting as well.
That is.
So this summer, I really wanted to make sure that we were providing sort of the most up-to-date professional development for our school counselors. We are really lucky that the American School Counselor Association has their big national conference. It happens to be in Boston this summer. So I offered it to all the counselors. I know it's during the summer, but I was hoping that we could get a lot to go. So I have 3 of the school counselors, 1 from Mindess and 2 from the high school who will be coming with me. We're going to kind of try to divide and conquer. So we sort of, there's lots of amazing, workshops in that conference. We want to try to kind of get all the areas so that we can then bring that back and, provide that PD for the rest of the counseling department. So we can really make sure that everything that we're doing is really up to date and, relevant for our students today. So I'm really excited about that. One thing that I'll be doing that I didn't get to do this year because I didn't start right away is we'll be scheduling monthly meetings with the counseling staff. So I see them quite often, but I'd really like to do like a K to 5, maybe the first Monday of a month for like an hour and a half, and then 6 to 12 together. I think that one of the things that I learned this year was that all of the counselors really are craving that ability to collaborate and consult, across buildings. And I think that will be really helpful in helping us have a smoother transition with our students. Especially going honestly from the middle school to the high school, I think that will be really helpful, and that's what that's a lot of the feedback I've gotten from both parents and from the counselors themselves, that they would like that. So I'm really excited to be doing that next year, and we'll focus on the self-assessment that they did and really progressing forward in terms of our counseling program that we offer. And then I'll make sure that we do that vertical planning time as well, K to 12, 2 to 3 times a year.
Mhm.
Oh, that's the end. Any questions?
Any questions?
I have a question. Just going back to the Parent Advisory Council.
Yep.
I'm just wondering, I'm the liaison for the ASHPAC group, so I'm just wondering, is that group represented there? Did you have any parents that maybe have the unique learners
Yes,
interested in that?
I believe that I do.
Okay.
Oh,
Just
I
wanna make
do?
sure. Yeah.
I went through the entire list after
You did?
Jen.
Oh, okay, good.
Actually, had
Yeah.
to bring me the list
Oh,
Yeah.
perfect.
of parents
Yeah.
who signed up, and she does.
I was just thinking,
absolutely.
I just wanted to make sure that
Yeah.
group
Yeah.
was, if they knew about it. I'm sure
They
they
do.
do, but.
Yes.
Yeah,
And I
okay.
actually just had, I don't know if she's the president of ASHPAC, Christine
Yes.
Cavity.
Yeah.
Just reached out to me
Co-chair, yeah.
about doing a workshop next year
Oh,
through
perfect.
ASHPAC. So
Okay,
we're
great.
meeting on Friday, so
As you know,
yeah.
unique learners, and they would probably have a unique.
absolutely,
Yeah. Take on that. Great. Okay, thanks.
Paul? Cool.
Great.
Thank you.
thank you so much.
It sounds like great work, Jen.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you.
Thanks.
Glad to hear all the progress you're
Yeah.
making. Mr. Kyra?
Do you want to jump in, Mike, or?
Yes, if
Okay.
I can. I am a little bit against the clock here, folks.
Oh,
So
So if
okay.
I need to
Come
come
back
back,
to
I will. I need to
Okay.
be in Millis to pick up my daughter. I don't want to leave stranded at a softball field at
Oh.
7:30.
We don't want
If I'd
that.
known, we
So-
would have flip-flopped.
Okay.
I'll be there as soon, I think I can get this in though.
I can be here.
Okay.
So just a brief update. Thanks for having me today. I wanted to talk to you about some of the things that we've accomplished for our goals, for our school improvement plan. First, our first goal was regarding the science MCAS. And as a group, we got together really early and we said that we needed to make almost an on-the-fly decision to spend a little less time on that actual school improvement plan goal and spend more time talking about mathematics. We were pretty happy with our science work that our students accomplished based on the MCAS scores that came back to us. And we were less pleased with the accomplishments of our math. So we talked as a group, and we talked as a school community, and I talked with teaching staff, and we really, while we still had some focus on science, we decided to make that focus more on math and looked a lot at the way we're teaching certain subjects in math and the way that we are mapping out our different curricula. So we had our teachers take a look at why we may not have done particularly well in a certain area. And we found that we weren't necessarily getting to it right away. We weren't getting to it fast enough. We weren't getting to it before the students had to actually take the MCAS test. So we reworked some of our things, and that was that wasn't an official goal, but that's something that was accomplished this year as opposed to this science goal. I thought that would be important to talk to you folks
So
about.
you're hoping to see some results of that when you get
I really am
the
hoping to
MCAS
see the
in
results
fall.
of that, in the fall. Our second goal is regarding rearranging a Mindess school report card. I think that Warren did a great job last year, putting out a new report card, and we really want to make sure that our report card shows parents and communicates with parents all the great things that are actually happening at Mindess, and it becomes a more explicit teaching tool for parents, for them to understand exactly what we're doing, and it becomes truly content and standards based. Right now, we don't think that our report card does that. Our team has met several times. We did a lot of work in the beginning of the year around making sure that we have the correct standards that we want. We have not met the last couple months, and we are set to meet again in June. We have some great proposals from that committee that we're going to put, and I'm going to put them forward to Mr. Adams to see what he says, because we'd actually like to even change the amount of times we're reporting based on a report card. We would like to move to a more specific standards-based report card, but utilize our conferences in a much better way. And that sort of goes to one of the goals that we're going to be looking at for next year. So I can segue into that. Next year's school improvement plan is obviously not completed. We have one more meeting in June, but we are looking at 3 goals. The first being, or one of, is how are we communicating with parents and with teaching staff, and how are we utilizing the information that we get from the new program that we implemented this year, iReady? And how are we using that data? And the goal is going to be around the usage of the data, how teachers are using the data, how administration is using the data, how we're using that data to drive our instructional practices, but also how we're using that data to now inform parents of our student progress. And that sort of coincides with our report card. So we're not sure if the report card is going to be finished for next year, but we are having really good conversations about how we're going to take these types of reports that we can get to bring out to parents. Goal number 2 is directly related to what you just heard. We've had an SEL goal at Mindess for the past 2 years. As I'm sure that you know, that's one of my passions. I've been talking about social emotional learning with your students. Some of you have had me with your students for a long time now, and that's something I feel very strongly about. And Jen knows this as well. And we've invited Jen to our June site council meeting because we want to create a goal that is aligned with her goals. And therefore they're also aligned with our blueprint that ultimately will be put in place. So we do know we want to keep SEL on the table. I feel confident that the majority of our staff are very familiar with Castle's 5 competencies. That's something that we've been working on in our building. We've got some great resources that an SEL committee had put together. But now we've got to take that and we've got to go to the next level, and we really need the partnership of Jen to do that. So we want to sort of heed her advice and make sure that we're on the same page. And goal number 3 is very timely as well, and it came after some great discussions with our site council about how we are going to better bring our community to one. We have, as you know, a multi-grade program, a single grade program. We got many great recommendations from Dr. Cohen's excellent work that she had done with our committee. And we want to make sure we're having more opportunities for not only our students to be integrated, but our staff to be integrated. And we're going to put that on paper and have some steps. I would be remiss to not mention today what an amazing event. I think that I challenge any elementary school in America to say that they have a more child-centered, fun event than the one we held today, the Mud Run. And that's exactly the kind of thing we're talking about, but on a smaller scale. How can we do things like that that are also, more academically rich for kids that happen regularly? But we make memories at Mindess, and the Mud Run is one of the greatest memories our kids are going to have. So that's about it. That's my quick and dirty version of where we are right now. I'm happy to answer a few questions if you have any.
I have a quick question. First of all, Mud Run, yes, best memory of my life.
Oh.
And second, the current report card, is that like the 1 to 5 that you're currently using? If the kids get a 5 if they did really well?
Yeah, we have a scale with numbers, and it's also, we've got letters and numbers, and we've got all sorts of different, we have one section has letters, one section has numbers. There's not a whole lot of consistency to it. We'd like to do that. We always know that people equate certain things to other letters that are from the past, so it needs an overhaul.
Anybody else?
I think it's also worth noting that typically, this time of year, we're voting to accept the school improvement plans, but as we talked about in other times, it's not for lack of their work, it's that we want to make sure that it aligns with the blueprint that we're going to adopt over the summer, and we want to afford the building principals the time to augment the verbiage in there to align with that. So that's partly the reason. It's not that the groups haven't been doing a lot of great work and that they wouldn't be prepared for us, but it's more that we want those things to align. So I want to make sure that's out there, that it's
Yeah,
not
that's a good point, Paul.
for lack of work.
Anybody else?
Okay.
Great.
Thank you, folks.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thanks, Mike.
Don't
Thank you.
speed.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Be careful. So Mr. DiGirolamo, in that vein, will be present in a little bit. He actually, again, this time of year, as you know, every night we have something going on within the district.
Yeah.
I believe tonight is his Washington, D.C.
Oh, meeting.
information
Yeah.
night, and so he should be here. He thought he'd be here by 7.
Okay.
So we'll get to that. But if we'd like to skip ahead to a couple of other
Well,
areas.
so we, Nicole wasn't here when we did the
Oh, great.
evaluation, so we had talked about potentially letting
Yes.
her provide some input, so if
Thank you, Paul.
I'd like to skip back to that if.
Great.
I do have a quick statement.
Oh,
Look at that.
I'm going to read the one I read. No. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead. Thanks.
It's kind of in a letter format, but
That's fine. That's good.
all right. Dear Ashland School Committee members and Mr. Jim Adams, now in the final 2 weeks of not only my Ashland High School career, but also my entire Ashland Public Schools career, I look back at my time in the school system fondly. In its buildings, I was shaped into the confident young woman I am today, and for all the support from the teachers, staff, and administration, I am forever grateful. However, before my sophomore year, I hadn't a clue in the world as to the job, or existence for that matter, of the Ashland School Committee. Through my service on the School Committee Advisory Council for the past 3 years, this last also including my very own name tag on the table, I have come to learn the significance of these men and women in their workings of the school system, in the inner workings of the school system. Due to their efforts, the school's budget is managed, buildings and technology are up to date to provide the best education possible, and all students, no matter race or ability, are accounted for and looked after. Every school in Ashland is a better place because of them. As for Mr. Adams, our wonderful and, might I add, quite cool superintendent of schools, thank you. Thank you for being so dedicated to our schools and to us, the students. Never have I seen nor heard of an administrator who is so directly involved in students' lives. Your visits to the school to say hi and ask how we are doing, your snow date chats that keep us biting our nails and praying to the gods that you will please, please, please let us have a day off, and your approachable, friendly manner shows just how much you care about us as students. Mr. Adams, you really do what is best for the students. We know him by his name, by his face, we know who our superintendent is. We know him by his name, by his face, by his personality, and we are proud to say hi to Jim Adams when he pops in for a hello. It was an amazing experience to sit on a board of such collaborative and open-minded people. Your leadership has proved to be a memorable example to me as to how to effectively work together to make improvements, and we had our fun in between. Please continue to make jokes. Laughter keeps us grounded and makes meetings more bearable. Just kidding. Kind of.
Kind of.
To next year's board, whether it be new or the same, don't forget about student voice. It is a powerful force filled with expert advice from those who are affected by your work. You need the students just as much as they need you. In the final days of my time at in the Ashland Public School System, I can say with confidence that I am and always will be proud to be a clocker. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole.
Nice, Nicole.
Good. I have copies if you want them.
Absolutely.
We'll attach that onto
Thank
your.
you.
Yeah. Thank you, Nicole.
For some reason, I think he's gonna like what you said more than what we said.
Yeah. And Aaron, just to bring you up to speed, so we had a little bit of a logistical issue with the evaluation instrument, and that, I won't go through all the details, I can explain to you later.
Okay.
But we did not vote to adopt it because the version I got from Lori through my assistant by secret envelope didn't include all the content, it only included part of it. So Jim fortunately had an email copy from Lori, which I read earlier, but we decided we would all get an opportunity to look at that, and we'll take up the vote on formal adoption of that next time. All right, thank you, Nicole.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
So why don't we move on to the highlights of the APS communication survey?
Yeah, so quickly, maybe I should take more time, Dave's not here, right? So as you know, I put out a survey to the community with regard to how well the Ashland Public Schools is communicating with the community, with parents, and what types of media we're using, and where we need to, refocus our energy. And actually today at our admin meeting, we talked a lot about communication and to be better at it. And I think the survey, which you have a copy of, which you don't have all the details behind in terms of the comments, which we'll go through it more in depth in the summer at the retreat. It's real clear. We communicate well, right? It's over 60% say we communicate above average, or with things on a daily basis, on a regular basis. But there's still a piece that says we're communicating some things that don't need to be communicated as well. When we're looking at all the flyers that we attach to the weekly emails from principals, and the redundancy, because if I have a child at Warrant and a child at Mindess and I've signed up for the newsletters, the flyers come in and they're one and the same, and a lot of the information is redundant, and it's repetitive, and we want to get rid of some of that stuff. But also on the flip side, what I learned was our website is not the most user-friendly for our community and for people to find information. As you know, we use Google Sites, which is a free platform for us, but yet if you go back through the history in my 10 years, each of the websites that was built for all the schools as well as the athletic department was done by parent groups originally. And then eventually Ann Canton, who was in our IT, and I wanted to give a shout out to Mrs. Canton. She is phenomenal at what she does. She helps us, she maintains the site, she gets all the information up there, but this isn't her main focus within the Ashland Public Schools. And if you notice all of the sites, they're very different, right? And finding information is a challenge. Everyone now has their phone, right? We can't, if you want to pull up something on our website, you can't do it easily with your phone. We noticed through comments that they're not, the websites are not ADA compliant. People can't get information, at a click of a button if they don't have a mouse, if they have some sort of disability, in order to work through our site. So, in short, people think we're communicating well. They want less robocalls. They want those to be mainly focused on emergencies and or snow days, but not for events that are happening within the district. So we've got a lot of work to do, and Mr. DiGirolamo just walked in, and we talked a little bit today about how we're going to revitalize our communication plan and strategy. And again, that will come out of our conversation this summer. I think for the most part, families are quite pleased with the communication over the last 5 or 6 years. I think I've always prided myself in over-communicating, and that was made clear in there too. that maybe, Jim, you don't need to hear yourself speak as much or write as much, which is fine. But I think I will be coming to this group, to the committee, to really look for some funding to potentially hire an outside agency to create a really professional website that is consistent across all buildings and departments, et cetera. I think it's much needed. I think it's time for that. I talked to Mr. Carpenter today and saying, we need Ms. Canton to be that liaison with us and to really work with us in terms of the data and getting information on the website. but it's time that we make it user-friendly and more efficient for our community members. So that's really the gist of what came out of the survey. But if you have further questions, certainly you do have a copy of it.
And this will be on the summer agenda as well? for
Absolutely.
retreat.
This will be a summer agenda item for the school committee, but also for the admin team. Because again, the inconsistencies between, building to building and teacher to teacher and team to team is quite dramatic. And when Jen talks about a mind shift and a cultural shift in terms of understanding SEL, there still needs to be this cultural and mind shift with regard to communication with parents. And some teachers do it quite well. Some teams at, say, the middle school, I'm just using the middle school because Dave's here, and teams do it quite well. But what is it that we need to be relaying for information, right? So when you look at the standards for educators and their evaluation, there's a section on communication, and you're communicating regularly with folks. And we don't do that well. I'll be very blunt.
Right, and the website, to me, when you say it, I don't see it as like creating a website. It's creating a web framework that can be extended and be used as a tool set for each building and quite frankly, potentially for each teacher, right? If they have, that framework should extend down to pages for classes and
Agreed.
that it's a tool set that they can use, they're all comfortable with, that they have supports for, because, as right now, they're all quasi-fending for themselves. Well, I understand this better than I understand this, whereas it can be, they can have the support of the district.
So I'm pointing to Jen because that was the conversation we had yesterday morning or 2 days ago. She's like, Jim, do I actually should I create my website now if this is the route we're thinking of taking? I said, yes, create it, because it's going to take a while to actually get go through even a procurement process and get a website designer on board, et cetera, to figure out what kind of information we need.
And I would say do it because you're gonna have a use case with a certain data set and certain mechanism that you're gonna wanna, and cadence you're gonna wanna do, and that's good input for whatever that framework's gonna be, that it's gotta incorporate that. So having that up front, I think, would be valuable.
So there are some specific vendors who deal particularly well with school systems, and so we'll be going down that road a little bit, but I don't want you to be blindsided by the fact that I might come to this committee and ask for significant dollars.
I was gonna say, as long as you can tell us where the money's coming from.
Yeah, well, right. Oh, that was sprung on Ms. Duran this morning.
Did she know?
And she knows now.
Why do I think the fall town meeting might include some discussion about?
No, it's not that significant of money. I mean, it's, so we'll get through it.
It sounds like a good
Anybody
plan.
else?
Well, when this is on our agenda this summer, is that more of like collaboration and idea building, or is it a presentation to us?
No, it'll be more, it'll be a part presentation, Aaron, and then I want your ideas as to what you think is really critically important that we communicate as a district, because that can lead into the goal setting for myself and the principals and the directors to say, this is where we need to focus on getting better at communication. And Mark and I have had these conversations a little bit about
4 years.
right about more teacher communication, educator communication, and what does that look like, and how do we get it to an area that is proficient in using the the terminology of the evaluation tool for communication, and I don't know if where we're heading with that, but again, probably 20% of our staff is really good at it. And the rest, communicate sporadically. And we just have to see what that looks like. So, but yeah, thank you. That's a good question.
Anybody else on this topic? Not, Mr. DiGirolamo?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
everyone.
Good evening.
Thanks for coming, Dave. I know you're busy.
Yep, just came from the DC meeting, so we seem to be doing okay.
So was that hold on. So
Yes.
the mud run was really cool. Now, was the DC trip okay?
DC trip was also phenomenal.
Right. So okay, we just want to make sure we get
Well,
cover all
I
the
was gonna
bases.
say, she's saying these things and it's great to hear, but I'm thinking a couple of weeks from now might
Right.
be kinda cool too.
Right. So,
You know,
Oh, yeah.
on the way out the door.
because your final meeting is actually after you graduate.
Mm-hmm.
So
So, well, thanks. So what I've done is just put together, just within some of the goals for the improvement plan, some of the things that we focused on for this year. So there are a lot of pieces on there that we've been doing now for the past 4 or 5 years, and that have been ongoing, that we're continuing to do, we're continuing to look at, whether it be analyzing data for MCAS, setting goals for students, creating ISSPs. These are things that we focused on for this year, just to talk about those a little bit. Within our goal 1, which was continuing to close the achievement gap, so students reach state, district, and individual learning goals. So this year we created science ISSPs. So just to talk very briefly, they're individualized student success plans. We've been doing them now for, I want to say year 5. Basically, students are identified who are in need of additional supports or interventions so they can be successful in the classroom. We've done them mostly, exclusively in the areas of math and English, or ELA. So in meeting with science liaison Kristen Mahoney last year, started to talk. I want to continue to expand the ISSPs in terms of the scope of the students we're supporting. And looking at science data, we wanted to provide remediation and include interventions for students in science as well, which is really important. So we started putting that together last year, so those are being implemented this year. So those students, in addition to getting supports and interventions for math and ELA, are also getting support for science. And there's a lot of crossover. So you might have some students who have just a science ISSP, some might have a math and science, so on and so forth. But it was a lot of work to create sort of the new criteria for the science ISSPs. What data are we looking at? Because it's a different set, as well as where you're going to implement it. Looking at our discovery block for mediation, they've put a lot into place to support those other students, so they really had to reconfigure their schedule and figure out how they're going to support those students and create those interventions, which they did. So that's been happening throughout the year, and we're obviously interested in looking at the data coming back from MCAS to see how it fared, and did those students achieve growth maybe on the other standardized tests, and just overall, do we have more students who are achieving proficiency or above in science MCAS? Because that's the difference in science, right? Because there's not growth. Students aren't taking it every year. So that's the part that's different. If you look at my improvement plan, all the goals that we've set focus on growth. I think that's really important. We don't say, students are going to achieve this mark, because students are at all different levels and have different strengths and needs. So if you focus on growth, that's going to get us to close the gap and get those students where they need to be. So science is different. Just 8th grade takes science. And in 5th grade, they take it at the Mindess, but in the middle school, they're only taking it in 8th grade. So you really don't have growth. You're just looking at overall proficiency, which is a little challenging because obviously it's a different cohort every year. So, but anyways, that's something that we're looking at. The implementation went successfully, and we're looking forward to seeing how students fared. And by the way, students just took those tests this week. Today was the last day. We have a few makeups to do, but today was the last day of MCAS. So we do have some 8th graders who have to make it up. Speaking of the DC trip, we have a couple of days to have them make it up, and everyone's getting ready to go. So we're looking forward to those results, but that's been something that we've talked a lot about at Site Council, and talking about the goals that we have, the data we're looking at, and so on and so forth. So I think the other piece within that first goal of closing the achievement gap is just looking at our English language learners population, and the number of those students that are in the middle school. That's a number that has grown within the year for the middle school, as well as we have a large group coming up. So those are numbers that we were talking about throughout the year, because we really did see an influx in January, which we sometimes see, but March and April, we saw another influx going in mid-spring. We saw just another handful of students coming in. So in addition to the numbers that are coming up from Mindess, that's something that we were constantly talking about, which drove the decision budget-wise to request an ELL teacher. It's definitely needed. I think I'm really excited to have it at the middle school. I know our current ELL teacher is excited. It's going to be able to create some more flexibility within the program, do some more push-in as opposed to just pulling out services, and as well as service students at the different levels. We've had quite a few students coming at that level 1, sort of newcomers, and it's just a different skill set, different strategy set. So that's something we talked quite a bit about, and that falls under that first goal. Under the second goal, which is the middle school will support students, faculty, and parents to develop strategies and tools necessary to maintain a physical and mental well-being. I think one of the main things we focus on and talked a lot about this year was the See Something, Say Something app or program that was implemented through Sandy Hook Promise, and I think has been quite successful. So students and staff were trained on See Something, Say Something in October. Students right in the theater during the presentation downloaded the app, and throughout the course of the year, students can submit anonymous tips ranging on any level of safety concern that they have. Part of the training was around mental health, depression, and anxiety, and warning signs, so students could recognize them, as well as, of course, downloading the app, how to submit a tip through the app, so on and so forth. And that's something that is being used throughout the year. I mean, sometimes we go a week without seeing one, and then there's other weeks where we see quite a few. You know, we had 2 today, for example. So for a while, sometimes you don't see any, and then sometimes one incident might generate some tips, which is great. And sometimes it's an incident we don't know about, or something that happens on the weekend at night, that sort of thing. So I think it's been a success, and I know that we've had some successful interventions because of students reporting through the app, and a large amount of those being relating to mental health, whether it be something around cyberbullying and a student struggling, and there's a lot of students reporting a friend or themselves who are depressed, severely anxious, or potentially thinking about harming themselves or something along those lines. So it's really great that they have that app. So I think that's been a huge success. And
Can you remind us when they do send a tip, where does it go? How does that process work?
sure,
again?
yep.
Sorry.
So if there's 2 pathways it can go to.
Mhm.
If it is related to student safety, it's a safety concern.
Mhm.
So they receive the tip at Sandy Hook,
Yeah.
in which case the school administration gets the tip, central office gets the tip, the police will get the tip,
Mhm.
and it's something that could be, they're seeing as it's a safety concern,
Mhm.
needs to be acted upon right away. There are also tips that are non-life-threatening tips, and those tips will just go to the school, the designated personnel in the school,
Oh,
myself, Mr. Morrow, will relay those to the counselors. So some tips are just, I have a friend who's being picked on.
Yeah.
So not all the tips, I
Right.
should say, that's true. In fact, I'd have to go back and look, but probably more than half are just,
Things like
hey,
that
this
nature.
happened on the bus.
Mhm.
I'm being picked on, which,
Oh, yeah.
once again, it's where students don't feel comfortable maybe going to the bus driver.
Right.
It's sometimes I get it. It's tough to walk into the office. It just gives them that
Yeah.
that venue, that forum to be able to go online anonymously and submit it.
Yeah.
And some don't remain anonymous. Some are okay. Just that's the way they do it. They'll submit the tip, and here's my name, and
Yeah.
we can call them down, and we follow it up that way. So they're not all anonymous. It's just
Yeah.
really so. I think it gives them that flexibility. So, yeah, it works. So that's been, I think, one part of that goal too. And I think the other part of goal 2 that we've started to look at this year at the middle school, which we've talked a lot about in site council, is just a focus on SEL. So I think 2 pieces to that. One, on the professional development side or the faculty side. 3 of my meetings, at some point we had an activity relating to SEL with the staff, really starting to dive into, in terms of SEL and Castle's competencies, what are we doing? And in those areas, and what are some areas that we're strong in, that we do really well, and what are some areas that, we could use some growth or support in. I know that I worked with Jen Cutler, who presented to the staff and conducted a survey and presented feedback to them. That was another faculty meeting. On the PD day, I know, Dr. Vieira had them talking about SEL, which was great for us because we collected a lot of information. So Jen, in her presentation, gave them some additional strategies they could try and information and resources to take it to the next level. So I think those conversations have been happening, and we just want to make sure whatever program we decide that we're going to go with, however we're going to increase those experiences for students, that we have all the information we need. We don't want to, we really want to do something. We want to move forward. We know that students need the support and that we need to be able to put something into place, but we want to make sure it's giving us what we want for students. So we piloted, our guidance counselors piloted one of the online programs and one of those lessons. And next year, we're going to increase that and actually pilot a different program, because we got some feedback based on that. So, but the bottom line is we're going to be increasing those experiences. There's a lot of different programs. There's a lot of different areas that you can present to students with only so much time. So we really want to make sure that we take our time and we evaluate those programs and do what's best for the students at Ashland Middle School. So that's been a big focus under Goal 2. And I would say the one under Goal 3, which was opening lines of communication and partnerships with parents and community members. And this really was from us analyzing MCAS data in the summer. And that was, and there goes my phone. I apologize.
Communication.
Yes, it is communication. It is. And it's my daughter, so.
Graduating in how many days?
Aw.
She's got just over a week, yeah, just
Wow.
over a week. She had a big day in the softball field. She wants to talk about it, so,
Aw,
yeah.
that's-
But I digress. Yeah, so it's exciting. So, so for Goal 3, to digress back to absenteeism, we looked at the DESE as part of the new data and information that they share with schools. One of the areas that they looked at is chronic absenteeism. Those students who are absent 10% more days in your school. So looking at that, we had a 4.9% chronic absenteeism rate. And I'll say that that rate is any student who's absent that amount. So it doesn't mean a healthy student who's choosing not to come to school. Those would be included, but if a student is out for even a excused medical condition, those are included. It's any of those absences for any reason.
And
So-
it's any ones that are also out for extended period of times that are getting supports as well would be
Correct.
included in there. Okay.
Yep, correct. So they're all included. So what we did is we broke down, we went through every single student that met that mark. We came up with a chart and said, okay, let's go back through. What are the reasons for every single student? And some were their medical reasons, and those things are going to happen. So it's never going to be, of course, it's never going to be zero, but just looked at some of those students, came up with some groups, and just started communicating more to parents about, here's the attendance policy. I sent out some things on attendance month in the fall. I think we're doing more, talking to Mr. Morrow, there's more family outreach when those absences go up. We always send a letter home, but now we're calling sooner. We're getting them into the school for a meeting. How can we support you? We know this is where you're at. In doing more face-to-face meetings with counselors present and the new middle school SRO present, just to give that viewpoint and answer those questions, just that extra level, which would usually happen when things got to a problem. What we did is just backed it up. And so before it gets to a concern level, it's, hey, what's happening here? They've been absent 8 times. Can you talk to us about that? And sometimes it's and again, those reasons can range too. But we've come up with some solutions because you've had students say, it might be a single parent who goes off to work early. The older brother goes off to work and they didn't have the bus pass, so those things happen too, and they don't outreach. So we need to figure that out, and we need to be the ones who outreach, right? So we set that. So that's under the Goal 3. We set some goals around that. We're looking to improve upon that. So the progress will be measured by the percentage decrease, of course, of those students, and we'll look at the DESE data to see if we've seen improvement in that area. But that can be a challenge because there are some that really are out of your control. Students are out for legitimate reasons, and they're getting supports and so forth. So those are some of the things that we focused on this year. And before I open up for any questions, so for next year, some of the things that we're looking at is expanding the ISSP scope. I mentioned that's part of what we did this year with science, but that's something we're going to continue to look to expand. We want to look at our class sizes and schedule. Our numbers are starting to go up, and class sizes are starting to get bigger. So at Site Council next year, we're going to be looking at those class sizes and really start to look at our schedule and the needs of the middle school to make sure we can deliver the same level of programming, given the increase in we're seeing in class sizes. I mean, just next year alone, you have a very small 8th grade class, and you have a really good group coming in So next year alone, you're picking up, I think it's about 30 students. It's 30 students. So some of the things that we're going to look at there, the continued focus on SEL I mentioned, continuing to pilot a program, increase that as well as experiences for students. And then again, the Metro West survey results are, we just have preliminary results, but that's something 2 years ago that we examined that data. We look at any of the concern areas for middle school students, and then those will be part of the improvement plan moving forward to next year. As I said, we have preliminary, but we'll get more detailed data going to that meeting next week where we go into NADIC and they share more information about the data and what schools can do. So that's a process too. That starts in the spring, and we'll be having those conversations through the summer. So we don't know exactly what that'll look like yet, but we'll be setting some goals around that as well. So
Thanks, Dave.
that's kind of the year and
Anybody have
looking ahead.
questions?
I have one question. With the larger class coming in, are you gonna have to transition a 7th or 8th grade teacher back down to 6th to compensate, or it's just gonna be larger class size?
No, I mean, it's not actually, it's about the same size as the current 6th grade class is now. So it's just, we're just gonna be more, it's gonna be more full. It's not like it's a huge, but looking at some of the class sizes
In 2 years.
coming into Mindess, a couple years away, that based with the team model that we do have, which sort of constricts what we can do for movement, that would be, you would have to do something there because the class, you'd be looking at class sizes over 30. And so that's something that we're talking about. Again, we're looking at next year. We need to look at now and figure out how, that's going to look and what we can do.
So you think about it, Aaron, if you have 200 students coming in to the team model, right, so you have 2 teams at each grade, so you're splitting those 100 students up into basically 25 a class for the core classes. When we're getting 240 kids coming in, 238 kids, in probably 2 or 3 years down the road, now we're looking at, instead of having 2 teams, are we going to have a half a team? And what does that look like? Or because of the model that Dave has in terms of the schedule, our teachers are teaching 4, and 1 is the discovery block. Creates their 5th teaching block. So if they taught 5 teaching blocks, it could reduce the number of students, obviously, in the classes from 25 to 20. But that being said, the success he's had in meeting the needs of the students with the supports is because of the discovery block, right? And because of that opportunity to pull kids and have. So it's going to be a catch-22. We're going to have to figure that out, and he knows that,
Yeah.
and the middle school teachers know that.
Yeah.
So.
We'll be looking at next year for sure.
Do we have anything else?
Can I bring one thing up while Jen is here as well, as it relates to the middle school? And as you know, one of the targets I've had since I began 5 years ago was really getting our students to be known by our faculty and staff, by our counseling staff, and creating those individualized plans for every child. So part of what Jen is proposing for next year as part of her budget is moving our guidance suite, if you're a counseling suite called Naviance that we have at the high school, where you can have a variety of information in there, personal information, as well as surveys and interest-based surveys that they can have, moving it down to the middle school, which we don't have currently. So that is something, that's one of the projects that she's proposed for next year to do, and she and Paul have figured out how to fund it and bring it in, bring it down. Anytime they come to me, I say, figure out how to fund it. So they're able to do that.
Both cringing at the
Yeah,
fact
they
you said
are,
that
right?
you already figured it out.
But they figured it out. But it's a great way for our counselors starting in the 5th grade to start building that database of student information. So as they progress through our system, counselors get to know the kids even more and have opportunities to gauge that interest, student interest, and then direct them from an academic and social emotional well-being. So it's exciting. So.
I personally think that that's probably a good idea because our use of Naviance at the high school is limited.
Yeah.
We start freshman year and it's like what do you like to do?
Right.
And like career plans and stuff. And I think I've gone into it maybe 15 times overall. So I think starting it earlier would be a good idea.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
And that travels with it,
Right.
which is
so
great.
We'll be updating to the district edition, so all the.
Jen, come on up here, please. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
I apologize.
No, come on.
Dave and I are working really closely with us on this. So we'll be updating to the district edition. So when they start in 6th grade, creating their portfolio and doing those different types of inventories you're talking about, that will all then go with them to the high school. So I think that will make the Naviance experience at the high school better as well, because they'll already have a lot of that built up. And I think that aligns with, Jim's idea of having that like portfolio for each student. And then, so I thought that if we started at 6th grade, then we could go down from there. But I thought at least that would be a good sort of transition to the high school with that. So we're excited to see that. And our counselors
that sounds good.
are excited as well. So I think it'll be it'll be great to see how that works out next year.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, next item on the agenda is recommendation for placement of batting cage at Ashland Middle School.
Yeah, so as you know, the softball field, it's been a couple of years of conversation with regard to the lacrosse wall. And the school committee did approve putting the lacrosse wall. It is up.
Yep.
But that being said, the batting cage that was there for the softball field it has to be moved. So Doug Small, DPW, as well as working with Stephen Marks, the athletic director, trying to find a couple different locations. And I did send, and it's in the packet, I don't know if it's in the packet, but I did send you in a separate email,
Sorry, it was
the
an email, right?
aerials of the fields. And the recommendation is that as you're looking at Hunt Field, which is the football field, you have a lot of green space right there. Before you walk onto the field, it's paved, and then there's green space. On the other side is the basketball courts, et cetera. That's the recommended area that they'd like to put the batting cage back up on, because it's out of the way. The other option is near the lacrosse wall, and that's not good for anyone.
Is this batting cage intended for softball
It's
field?
just softball,
Okay,
yeah,
so it's
just
not
the
the
softball.
baseball.
No, it's not the baseball, it's just a softball field. It wasn't heavily used because, we still have some work to do with the fields at the high school. I don't think our initial development of the fields up there was, we've been battling for years with the baseball and the softball fields up there to get the proper dirt and consistency but, so we still use the middle school softball field at times, and especially for youth softball and middle school as well as JV. But they'd like to see the cage back up, and I told them just to hold off because it's still school property. So I wanted to make sure that.
I'm having trouble finding the area.
I sent you. I sent an email to everyone.
So it's down here?
It's right here, the bottom.
You have.
I don't know if I had asked Mr. Carpenter to put it
Is
on.
it this part here?
Yes, correct. You can see it.
I can't find an email from you.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't either.
Here,
I
I just
had one,
circled it on.
Okay,
It's there.
I know where it is.
But-
I know I got it and I saw it. I don't remember when it was.
This is a general outline of the middle school.
Right. Yeah.
There you go.
Where is?
So the batting cage, it was
But also,
here,
this
but
picture
this is
doesn't
now
have the
across wall.
basketball court on it. The basketball court's there now, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yes. The high school also uses the middle school fields a lot because, like Jim said, our fields are interesting. The dirt has it can
Oh, I
be
do have
really nice if it's maintained.
Has
It's
to be
like
watered,
Fenway
right?
dirt. It has to be watered every day. So if it's not, it's cement with a little bit of dust on it, and we can't play. So
Yeah.
we go down to the middle school.
Just for frame of reference, because people are probably wondering what we're talking about.
I was wondering what we were talking about, so.
Huh?
I said I was wondering what we were talking about.
I did send it out with a
Yeah.
copy of the survey. So that additional backup data was sent with the results of the survey.
Oh, so maybe that's why I didn't see it, because it wasn't,
It's a PDF inside that.
Okay.
But
I saw it.
but here it is. I had
Oh,
Mr.
there it
Carpenter
is,
put it
yeah.
on here just in case. It'll take a second to. And clearly, they're using an older site plan because the basketball court is there. Which,
Well, Google Maps, the aerial still doesn't have it
Yeah.
on there, so.
right.
that's
That's what I
probably
mean. This is the aerial from the Google map, so.
Basketball
Yeah.
is
Yes,
right
yeah.
there.
But this is based on the recommendation from DPW as well as the athletic director, where they believe it's the safest and the best place to go.
Is there a reason they put the lacrosse wall where it is?
Yeah, they came in and asked, and originally there were two locations. One was further out in the soccer field, backing up to the access road, if you will, and just felt that wasn't an appropriate spot either. It would have hindered the soccer fields. Wouldn't have been able, or in lacrosse field as well as field hockey. That was one of the locations. And really, the conversation with regard to the softball in the batting cage, it wasn't being used all that much.
It was in rough shape.
It was in rough shape, and you know
That's half the time.
so. Okay,
As long
Miles.
as you can drag over your screen, it may not be, I don't know if that's a PDF or a PowerPoint.
It's a PDF.
Okay.
I don't know why it's just not showing up.
Do you have, Paul, do you have a sense of where we're talking about?
Yeah, so I pulled
Okay.
it up, because Paul sent it
Okay.
over.
I think, Jim, unless you've got it coming right up, it
Yeah.
seems like people have a pretty good idea of what we're talking about.
Okay, well, I just wanted to.
But you're basically talking at sort of, before the end zone closest to the school building, there's an area of grass
Yeah.
between sort of the paved area
Correct.
and the field. And so it's that area that, we're talking about.
Correct. Yeah, it's away from everything. It's just really behind the softball field, home plate side.
So do people feel like they need to see anything more on this or ask any questions?
I think it
Erin, you
looks
look
good. I think it looks good there.
Or concerned or
Thanks,
something?
Miles. We can shut up. Technology
Thanks, Terry.
issues. But again, I'm just going based on the recommendation of DPW as well as.
And-
athletic director.
And so the permanent structure is just a few pipes and
Netting.
to hang
Correct,
the
yeah.
netting, because it's
And
gonna
they
have a
pull the
ca-
netting down.
and-
They
and-
should be pulling the netting down to preserve it when softball season's over. I think that's one of Mr. Marks's.
And I assume when they're not in use, it's gonna just be slid down the cables at an end and
Right,
take care of that way.
So.
Erin, did you have something?
Well, so Barbara and I worked on a grant, it's maybe 2 or 3 years ago, with the state to try to get funding to turn this into like a small playground, given that there's so many sports that happen, not only like school-related sports, but town-related sports, and that there was a place to play, like if you're a spectator at one of the games, but you have little ones that they could play there. And so I kinda don't love the idea of losing that space for future use, either for a multitude of things. Like there's different groups that use that space. It's even a warm up. Like it's the warm up area for all the lacrosse games. That's where the teams warm up. So when one or two teams is on the actual field, the kids warm up in that area. So you'd be cutting that down. And
See
then
that picture?
But why not at the other end of the field?
Erin, can I see the picture you got there?
this one.
Sorry.
At the opposite end of the football
There's
field?
there's actually more space over there, it's safer and,
Not if you have another game of another sport going on, which is why the lacrosse rebound wall wasn't put down there, because you could get hit with a fly ball from baseball.
Correct. That's where it was. That's where
So
they were.
just, I mean, like, I'm not gonna be heartbroken if it goes there, but just a thought, like, what if it were parallel to the basketball court and right next to it, and that way preserving a little bit more of the grass area?
There's a well, I know there's an issue with that area.
Okay,
I think there's a well there.
is where all of their drains are.
The drains
yeah.
are right there, and
Okay.
yeah.
And remember, that's why I asked, so, to just get an idea of what type of batting cage we're talking about. So, just like if you remember what was here, it's literally, like 3 sets of pipes with cable,
and
and
sand.
so you simply, for the most part, it's open, when it's not in use, right? So you're not gonna keep the netting spread out, because you wouldn't want that just invites a lot of problems. So for the most part, even if you still wanted to, if it wasn't in use, you'd still be able to use that area to do whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd have some limitation if the pipes are still there, but how, Jim, do you know how hard it is to move this? I mean, to Aaron's point, if some point down the road, we get access to funding for a playground or something like that.
I don't think it's difficult to move at all.
Okay, so-
They're gonna have to put a couple footings in, for
Yeah,
sure.
but it's just digging some footings
That's it.
and concrete
Yeah.
and, yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean,
We've moved the one at the high school, the baseball one, we've, originally when it was set up, we moved it because it didn't fit within the confines of where, the architects had it originally. Yeah. But they would just like to move forward with it, and I put them off most of the spring. Because I said, they started digging something, I said, hold on,
yeah.
we gotta get school committee approval.
So, yeah, we don't, assuming the committee's prepared to make a motion on this, we didn't have a recommended motion, but it does sound like we want a motion rather than just consensus of the committee on this.
I'd like
Okay.
that, just to have it documented.
So is there a motion to approve the recommendation for placement of the batting cage at AMS as per Mr. Adams' suggestion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition?
Thank you.
Next item, appointment to the Accept Board of Directors for 2019-2020.
Yeah, this is an annual appointment. Typically, we do it in September in years past, but the Accept Board has asked that now all superintendents have this done in June, because really the year starts July 1, or, well, before end of June, sorry, before the year begins July 1.
So one just for people at home, explain what Accept is.
Sure. Accept is a collaborative of school districts in mainly the Metro West area that Accept is a school, it's a public school where number of our students and students from the Metro West area are provided significant resources for special education students and areas that we cannot provide for. We've built a lot of programming internal in the Ashland Public Schools, but there are some students that we just can't service with unique needs. And the Accept Collaborative is that schooling. Now, Accept also provides to our member districts transportation for our students, our special education students, and throughout the summer, et cetera. They're our busing company when students have to have very specific transportation needs. But they're also a very professional development organization. So a lot of professional development takes place at the collaborative, especially as it centers around special education PD. So it's just a cost-effective way for districts to participate and have our students who need special services attend school.
So the Board of Directors is typically made up of
All
superintendents of all.
The Board of Directors is completely made up of superintendents. They have a board, a director at the Accept Collaborative, whom we hire and we monitor and we evaluate, and so the collaborative really works under the superintendents.
So I think what we're looking for is a motion to appoint Mr. Adams to be on the Board of Directors as the school committee rep. Is there a motion?
So moved?
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstention?
You just sealed my fate because I am
Thanks,
due to
Jim.
be the president this year.
Well, if you wanted out, you could have said
Yeah,
so.
I
Could
wanted
have
out.
appointed Paul.
I was gonna say, maybe an assistant superintendent could be,
Needham,
honored.
no, he can't actually. But Dan Gudekamp from Needham is no longer going to be in charge. He sort of swindled me into it.
There's no other way to do it.
No other way.
All
So you're
right.
gonna complain,
Don't
so you're gonna
bet.
complain to yourself about transportation costs now?
I am,
File a complaint
actually.
with the president.
I will. Only to Dr.
Get the answers he
Maybe,
wants.
maybe to Dr. Tremblay over in
Right.
Framingham.
There you go. All right, administrative items, superintendent's report, Mr. Adams.
I have none with, I say that, with the.
I don't have much.
I don't, honestly. Just with the exception, we have a lot coming up in the next few weeks with regard to seniors. Our final day is Friday. Then they have their senior week. I will not take the thunder away from Nicole, but class day and graduation are coming up, and lots of events every night in all of our schools. So if you're out there watching and listening, look at the calendar and see what's going on. So, that's it.
Thank you. Paul?
I'll be brief. Mr. Abs,
That was
I
pretty
think
brief.
Jen was being very modest in the work that she did. I'm really
Yeah.
excited to partner with her next year with professional development. We started actually talking about it around February, March of this school year. And when you look at our vision statement about being a model district, I think the work that she's doing in the professional development that we're going to be doing next year with staff is actually a definition of us being a model district. We have a great opening for staff with that, with Aaron Plansky, as she said, the self-care fair, and then the work that we're doing with Stress Busters at the end of the day. She talked a lot about some of the website that we're creating. And I think some of the stuff you'll see with those monthly meetings, those themes going out, us doing things with Zoom sessions with school districts locally and across the nation, will really make us that model district. So I just didn't want, Jen's presentation not to have that weight. She's really doing some phenomenal things with it. I'm excited to partner with her, and she's spot on. Blending that SEL with the curriculum really is that next piece to go to that next level. And it's about changing that mindset inside the classroom that when a student has an issue, we're not sending him down to the office next to the principal's office. That's what that department does, is what are we doing inside the classroom to help address student issues before we refer them to the office. So really excited to do this work with her and collaborate with her next year. I think you'll see a lot of great things as we report out next year.
Yeah,
That was it.
Thank you,
Great.
Paul.
thanks, Paul.
Kathy, warrant approvals.
Sure. Between April 25th, 2019 and May 22nd, 2019, I, Kathleen Bates, authorized by my signature payables in the amount of $701,398.01. This includes general fund expenses of $342,673.58, revolving expenses of $351,954.03, meals tax expenses of $195.93, and grant expenses of $6,574.47. Finally, I authorize payroll in the amount of $3,153,845.90.
Thank you, Mrs. Bates.
You're welcome.
Next item, approval of the minutes from the May 8th, 2019 meeting. Anybody have anything on minutes?
I have nothing.
Not. Let me just check real quick. Don't think I had anything. No, I have no edits.
A motion, can we have a move? Can we have a motion? A motion to
I-
approve the minutes as presented.
So moved.
There's a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? 4-0. Any
Okay.
gifts?
We do. We have. I'm going to do this in two phases, if you don't mind.
Okay.
One is deals with cash gift and donations, and the other is a bench that we've talked about briefly before. But let me just go through the cash piece first, please. Michelle Smith of $900 for the Washington D.C. trip. Weight $10 to the class of 2019. Planet Aid $525.10 to miscellaneous gifts and donations. The Pfizer Foundation $102 miscellaneous gifts and donations. Student Treasurers Acquisition $100 miscellaneous gifts and donations. Eric and Sarah Monahan $200 to the book fair for Warren, and State Street Foundation $9,000 for miscellaneous gifts and donations for a grand total of $10,837.10. And I will state that the State Street Foundation is the second year, I think it's the second year we've done this, third year that we've done this through Mr. Kendall's work.
That's
So
what that is.
the total amount is $10,837.10 in cash.
Nice.
So can we
Okay.
get a motion to accept that first?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
And thank you, Mr. Kendall.
Great. Thanks,
And
Mr. Kendall.
Motion to thank Paul.
Yes.
And
So
the
moved.
second gift donation I would like you to accept tonight reads as follows. In honor and memory of my son Jake Silver and my husband Tony, daughter Haley, and I would like to donate a bench to the school up by the football field, one of Jake's favorite places. I've attached the receipt for the bench. We also plan on purchasing 2 self-watering planters to buy on either side of the bench. The benches come in. It probably most likely will not be installed and in time for graduation, but it is here and they want to be able to just put it out, so we should accept the gift. And so the gift of the bench total is $964.41. I just ask that you accept the gift and
Do you have a motion to accept that gift?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any objection? Any abstention?
No.
Or not?
No.
Do we need to, similar to what we just talked about with the cage, if we're placing this somewhere, do we have to?
Yeah.
we have had that discussion. I don't believe we voted on it yet, but I believe I'll have to go back and look at the notes. But I know we had the conversation previously.
I don't think
Yeah.
we discussed, I
Really-
think we just had a consensus, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly, that we thought it was a good idea and for them.
Where
Yeah.
they
Yeah, because we didn't want them to obviously go ahead with it if,
Right.
and it was
Yeah.
gonna be
Right.
for Jake and PJ, right?
correct exactly it's for both.
Ah,
And so
okay.
when
Right.
I will have a formal at the next meeting, I will
Okay.
get the formal vote as to where it will be placed.
Good enough.
But
Okay.
it will not be installed until
Sorry.
our next meeting anyway.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right,
And I
that
just
sounds
wanted to-
great.
I mean, we
Thanks,
could,
Mark.
since that was not something that the chair, the vice chair were aware of, we could probably take it up if we had to.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. But we can wait.
We can wait.
Committee reports of activities, member updates, Mr. Kendall. Actually, yeah. Sorry. You're already kind of 9 steps out the door, so.
All right, APs are done. They finished last week, and as a nice reward for that, there was prom last Friday. I didn't go, but it was a lot of fun to watch them all do Grand March and make fools of themselves. No, it was fun. It was a good time. They all had a lot of fun. MCAS was done this week for the sophomores. It was all done on computers, and my sister hated it on the computer.
Oh, shit.
Just feedback.
Talk to Desi.
Pass that on to
Great.
us.
Yeah,
Not our fault.
yeah.
Let's see. New boards for all the clubs, Make-A-Wish, NHS, Duco, have all been elected, which is cool to see those new leaders rising up. And you'll have a new school committee advisory council soon. What else? I voted yesterday for the town
Excellent.
elections.
Congratulations.
It was fun. I saw Mr. Kendall there, and we chatted. I told him that I voted for him.
I voted for the other guy.
She told me that, there's no proof of that.
This week has been senior finals. We've come in for the first 2 periods for finals, and then third period has been the financial
Oh, yeah.
classes for these past 3 days. They've been really good. I've learned a lot about big purchases and checking accounts and all of that. So it's something really good that I think that we can all take to our future lives, whether that be college or workforce or military. Also with that is the Signs of Suicide booster that they've done for all of the seniors. And Miss Shields, who's in charge of that, actually asked the NHS board to come and help her, because our goal this year was with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention to promote a message of mental health and reduce the stigma around that. So we went and helped and discussed depression and all that, and we had good responses from all of the students. And finally, next week is senior week, so we will have our banquet on Tuesday, go to Kimball Farms on Wednesday, Canopy Lake Park on Thursday, and then our boat cruise as well as class day on Friday. And at class day, since the senior schedule is a little odd this year, there's less time for everything, NHS is going to do the check presentation to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, which is a giant check that has a lot of money written on it. We're just over $20,000
Wow.
this year, and we still have a car wash this Saturday at the VFW
Wow.
if anybody wants to drive by
Wow.
in the morning. So we get to do that at class day this year, and we're very
Oh,
excited.
nice. Excellent.
Thank
Do you
you.
have a battalion still or no?
The boat cruise type
That-
thing on Friday. Yeah, so we go into Boston and
So
we
are
dress
we going
nice.
to see you at our next meeting? You will have graduated by
June 12th.
June, is it 5th
Oh,
or 12th?
Our first meeting is the 12th.
The 12th.
Yeah, it's the second Wednesday, and her presence is requested.
Yes. I will
Okay.
be there. I have
Excellent.
orientation the days before that, but I will be there on Wednesday.
All right, Mr. Kendall.
All right, so since our last meeting, I did attend the academic awards presentation over at the high school.
That happened too.
We went as well, but let Paul take the fun.
He was obligated to go, but we had actually 2 policy subcommittee meetings, because we're
In 1
working with Kathy Silva on the physical restraint policy, which is a boatload of work, and so we appreciate the time she spent on that. Was it yesterday? I did go over to Ashland Dale House for the Make-A-Wish fundraiser, where they were, if you mentioned the Make-A-Wish, they'd get 20% of the food proceeds. And let's see, was there anything else? I don't think so.
That sounds like a light week, a couple weeks for you, Paul.
I didn't write down what I did, so
All right.
I'm just looking at the calendar and trying to figure it out.
Aaron, anything?
Other than voting in the election yesterday. No, and congratulations to those who won their contested races, and thank you to those who ran it all, because civil services, as we know, it's hard to come by sometimes. And congrats to you, too.
Now you beat me, so.
Yeah.
By 42
Yeah,
votes, I think.
42 people like me.
But who's counting, right?
Who's counting?
But-
It's right, Paul. Those 42 voted for your wife. It's okay.
Yes, probably. So congrats to Tricia as well.
Yeah, right.
No, I've-
We didn't even run a campaign. We had a great swell. Just vote Kendall, and you could have.
Yeah,
That's
Yeah.
right.
That's true.
I've just been traveling a lot for work, which is also why I was late today, so, not a lot else going on.
Kath?
Policy Subcommittee is keeping us busy. And then I did go to the athlete recognition breakfast. That was last week. That was really nice. Mr. Martin, is that the first time? I know they've done that signing before. I've seen pictures, but this was nice. They brought all there's 16 student athletes going on to play sports in college at the collegiate level. So Mr. Marks brought everyone together, parents and coaches and the student athletes, and administration was there. Very nice recognition before school started.
That's great.
Yeah, it was very nice. And then I went to the Grand March for the junior prom. It's very cute.
I don't think I have anything to report on that category.
If I may, I
Yeah.
probably should have, just back to the donations. So I'd be remiss if I didn't, I do think it's pretty cool. One of the things that my company does, along with obviously what a lot of companies do, gift matches and things like that, they do also do volunteer grants, and that's what that $9,000 is. And so another kudos to them. It used to be for every 16 hours of volunteer work, you could do a $250 grant, and this year they doubled it. So for every 16 hours, it was $500. So that's where that came
This
from.
is why you go to so much stuff.
And so that this because it's for the schools and I'm not paid position, it counts, and so it's a great thing that they do, and we'll
We're
Yeah,
still
that's
trying to figure out
great.
what we're doing
Yeah.
with the funding.
Yeah, and
Paul,
they-
Yeah,
we're
that's
gonna talk
nice.
at some
and,
point.
and if I recall correctly, I think it's like 14,500
say,
over the
yeah,
past 3
exactly.
years that
Yep.
they
Wow,
that they've
that's
done.
nice.
That they've done. So,
Fantastic.
Thank you.
That's great.
Let's see if I can get my firm to start doing the same thing.
yeah, sure.
Might put ourselves out of business, but yeah. Last item is action items. Anybody have anything that they want to add to the list?
The only thing I would put on there, I don't know if you necessarily need to, but we'll make sure it's on the agenda, is the formal vote on the evaluation.
Yep.
But I don't think you need to put it on an action item. So-
No, we just need to make
Yeah.
sure we put it on the
Make sure it's
agenda.
Okay.
Yeah, the only thing I actually thought about, and it came to my mind while Dave was talking earlier, as he was talking a little bit about growth and measuring things, is, you know, we kind of made a commitment to trying to look at evaluating the impact that change in start times had. And, you know, I think when we went through it last year, we really felt like it was too early to have anything other than anecdotal feedback. But it struck me that we are at the end of year 2, and that it would be worth taking a look at that issue. Probably, I would assume, a summer retreat type of dialogue. I don't know what those data points might be,
Yeah.
but it seems like it's something that's at least worth putting on the action items for future discussion.
Yeah, the struggle I'm having with data points is when we're looking at the start times, many districts look at it from an academic lens. And I've sort of avoided the academic lens, partly because we have a rotating schedule. And so that first period class, to actually monitor the grades and the attendance is very challenging to do, especially even within our system. Because every period, every day is a different period that starts the day. So I've always looked at the anecdotal from teachers and parents saying, the morning routine, is it better, is it not better? So we certainly can survey that piece of it. Discipline in tardies, is it directly correlated or not? I think when we get into the Metro West Health Survey data, I'd like to see where our stress levels are, and to see, and again, there's not necessarily direct correlation, but there's gonna be some sort of correlation.
And you also have trouble with isolation, right?
Absolutely.
So we're
Yeah,
doing
there
so
are
many
many
things.
other variables.
Right.
We have so much social, emotional stuff going
Right.
on that, you know, how do you say this is attributed to this as
Right,
opposed to?
and it's gonna be, it'll be challenging. I certainly think it's worth having a survey in the fall of students to say, you know.
But I agree with Mark.
Yeah.
Why don't we put it as an action item
Yeah.
to say, hey, let's see if there's something we can dig up on it that's meaningful.
Sure,
I
absolutely.
mean, if it ends up being the answer is anecdotal at
evaluate,
best in
yeah.
a survey,
Right.
that's what it is.
Right.
But keeping it on the radar, I think, is a good idea.
Agreed. Yep.
Anything else anybody wants to put on the action items? I will remind people that you had circulated a draft of topics. I think this went to everybody, right, for the summer retreat agenda? or was that
Correct.
just- So if there are things that you want to see added to that agenda.
Wait, you did send it?
I did, yep.
Jim,
Yep.
send something out.
I sent
Oh.
I sent it a Google Doc, a shared Google Doc, to everyone.
Yeah, so
So-
in terms of
Okay.
response, either
don't remember
just send an email back to Jim or to Lori about things you'd like to see discussed or considered for it, and then
May look for
we'll
it.
be
I'll have to look
working,
for it.
we'll obviously be working about setting that agenda.
Yeah, it's
Some
probably
point.
safer to do it that way. Open meeting law would be fine, just saying, place this on the agenda, that's something that's not open meeting law, if you gave any justification for it.
Yeah,
That's
no,
where
that's all I was
that's the
just,
slippery
topics.
slope.
I'm not
so-
looking for that, I'm just looking
Yeah.
When
for
did
a
you send that though, just so I can look?
couple days ago.
A couple days ago.
Mike, did I miss this
I'll
at
look.
the beginning? Do we need to reorg the board or revote?
did
No,
that.
we're all good.
We
You're in
already did
charge.
I mean,
You have all the positions. Did you take notes?
All good.
that. Yeah, you're the
We
secretary.
made you all three.
I ran a
Chair,
very
vice chair, and
efficient, I ran a very
And we
efficient
fi-
opening
We
of the
fired
meeting.
Aaron as well, so you have to take all the
We did
minutes.
not change anything.
All good.
It all stayed the same.
You know,
Okay, I gotta look for
5 minutes late, you
this
miss a whole lot.
agenda that you sent, topics for the summer, okay.
Okay. Does anybody have anything else that,
Got it.
not? We have a motion to adjourn.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye.